Good morning once again.
Good morning.
I really appreciated your welcome last week and look forward all week to being with you again this morning. This morning, our focus in the Episcopal Church is on women and women in the church. And this reading gives us a wonderful opportunity to talk about that. The Canaanite woman, Canaanites being the ancient enemies of the Jews, got what she needed through persistent faith in Jesus Christ. Unlike the Roman soldier, another Gentile in, I believe it was chapter 7, she is a Gentile that seemingly has nothing to offer Jesus. The disciples and the onlookers are not urging Jesus to help her as they did with the centurion. They are urging Jesus to send her away. But she kneels in his path, and he insults her, and she refuses to take offense. She persists, turning his own words into an undeniable argument in her favor. Yes, Lord, but even the dogs lick the crumbs from the table. For most of us, this is an embarrassing text, one of the few in which we are embarrassed almost for Jesus. This man of love who has reached out to all the untouchables and to the poor and to the disenfranchised and to the children themselves, here calls this woman a dog. And in our day and age, that is hard to reconcile. And the church has struggled for centuries with what to do with this sentence. Well, I like to think that it shows us, and that Matthew is showing us, that Jesus was fully God and fully human. And he was raised in this culture which had this understanding of anyone who was not Jewish. And he felt that he had been called by God to only serve the Jewish people. But Matthew shows us Jesus allowing this foreign woman to open his eyes, the eyes of his heart, so that her persistent faith is recognized. He recognizes her as a faithful child of God, and he grants her what she has requested. Think of the power of that moment. This nobody, who the disciples have said, "Send her away. We have nothing to do with her." Jesus allows to teach him. The president of the Pittsburgh Theological Seminary, where I went to school, preached on this sermon, one of the few times I heard him preach. And that was his understanding, that this woman taught Jesus. And isn't that the mark of a human being, that we can be taught? Sometimes. Hopefully. And so it's a powerful, powerful story. Great is your faith. Let it be that your daughter is healed. Let it be so, he says. In other words, amen to what you are requesting. And so the struggle of this woman to be recognized, to be addressed, to be welcome at the table has begun well in the past and continues to the present day. This week we are celebrating women, and your bulletin lifts up 3 valiant women from our church history. One of these, St. Clare, was born a wealthy woman. She was raised in a palace in the beautiful city of Assisi. Her father was a count. She had the advantages of wealth and was, even as a child, very devoted to her faith and to prayer, as was her mother. But they were people of their time, and her parents wanted her to marry as a child bride, which was what happened in those days. And she convinced them to not have her marry at the age of 12, but to wait until she was 18. Then she could put it off no longer. Her parents chose a husband for her. But the night before her wedding, she ran away from home. And where did she go? She went to see a man, St. Francis. And he cut off her hair and hid her under a heavy robe and took her to a Benedictine convent where she hoped to be able to settle for a little bit. But her father found out where she was and tried several times to abduct her and force her into this marriage. Eventually, her persistence won the day. She moved to the church that St. Francis had rebuilt, and she started a new order. Name for the church, the Order of San Damiano. It was much stricter than the Benedictine order. She wanted her women to live, as St. Francis's followers did, in poverty. And she even decreed that they were to go shoeless. Imagine. She was joined by other women, including her sister Agnes, and eventually by her mother. Think of her father's reaction to this series of events. You almost wonder what was in the water in Assisi during this time period, 1205 to 1212. First, Francis walks away from his wealth, followed by several of his friends. He, in fact, went before his father and took off all his clothes and said, "Here, have back what is yours. I myself am a free person, and I choose a life of poverty." Then the women started to join the movement. Can you imagine the city fathers trying to figure out what is going on? After her death, the order was named in her honor, and now we have the Order of St. Clare, or the Poor Clares. She persisted with her own rule, even though the Pope was against it. She was the first woman to write her own rule for her order, and eventually, through her persistence, the Pope gave in and accepted it. A powerful story of a woman who persists through her faith in living the life she felt God called her to. And we can say, well, that was the 12th century. Surely those kinds of things don't happen today. I was looking at the newsletter that is sent out electronically by UN Women. I don't know if any of you have heard of this organization. The United Nations has consolidated all of the parts of that huge organization that were dealing with women's issues and created UN Women to give 51% of the world's population a bit more presence at the United Nations. It's been probably 3 years, I think, 2 or 3 years, that UN Women has been a part of the United Nations. And it was quite a struggle to create it. But now they send out these monthly emails, and I was scanning through it, looking at what was the focus of this month, and it was the girl child. Their newsletter article had several articles from around the world, and I was reading about Khadija Mohammed, a young woman in Ethiopia. She is facing the same struggle that Claire faced. Khadija had been promised to her oldest cousin since birth. When she turned 16, her parents started to prepare for the wedding, but Khadija wanted no part of it. She was in dread of being married to her older cousin. She finally gathered her courage and told her parents. And their reaction was to be enraged at this act of rebellion. In desperation, she turned to her local district council and later to the district women's affairs office. She was fortunate, said the article, after her parents spoke with the authorities, they relented. Still, life has not been easy for Khadija since she refused to marry her cousin. She says, I am being ridiculed by the community for resisting my parents' arrangement. And some are fearful that other girls may follow suit. The village authorities, once again, just like the father authorities in Assisi, wondering what is happening to our world. A few parents have even considered pulling their daughters out of the school that she attends. But she has no regrets. She still ended up marrying early at the age of 17, but she married a man of her own choosing, she says, and she's been able to continue attending school. Today, at the age of 18, she's in grade 7 and continues to embrace the program on the prevention of child marriage and female FGM, genital mutilation and cutting. She has been a vocal opponent of FGM, and she says that she does not regret the choices that she has made. Girls sometimes approach her to tell her she is their role model. As for her critics, Khadija shrugs off their disapproval. All this is nothing to me. I will keep very strong and go on, she said. Lest we think this happens only in faraway places like Ethiopia, consider the number of states where girls can still be married at 16 or even 15 or 13. In New Hampshire, it's 13. In New York, it's 14, if they have parental and judicial consent. That is the standard throughout the United States, 18 or 16 with parental consent. That's awfully young to have your future decided. Girls are being trafficked in the United States at tragic numbers. The last figure I saw was about 300,000. That means they are being taken against their will and brought into either the sex slave trade or into forced labor. The majority of that 300,000 are U.S. citizens. And ECPAT, the organization that was created to protect children from abuse, now warns that the greatest abuse is happening on the internet, where terrible, hardcore pornography against children is available to those that know where to look for it. In many ways, our girls are still struggling. Girls and women of color are especially subject to abuse, although it can happen to any woman from any walk of life. The problem is that they see themselves through the eyes of their abusers as worthless, as troubled. And too often, the authorities confirm that message when they seek help. But there are strong efforts to change these things. You know that the Congress has started to try to put forward a new legislation that will protect women when they go to college. Because right now, that is not happening, and I think the statistic was 1/5 of college women are at some point attacked. Is that what you think about when you think about sending your daughter off to college? It's not what we want for our children. But this congregation is helping to address the problems for some of the girls in New York State through at least one organization that I'm very aware of. It is supporting the Rural and Migrant Ministry, RMM. How many of you have heard of RMM? Yeah. Girls and boys in that organization are given leadership opportunities to hold each other accountable and to lead their organizations, provide themselves with support to be strong together. There's the Youth Arts Group, which was made from young people who had attended the Rural and Migrant Ministry camp. They were mostly in schools in Newburgh, and they wanted a way to stay strong after they left the camp and were back in school, because most of the children in their high schools felt that it was uncool to be seen walking around with textbooks in their schools and going from class to class and paying attention. So they formed this group, the Youth Arts Group, and it's been going for many years now, and 95% of those kids go on to college out of a school where most drop out in the 9th, 10th, 11th grade. So you are supporting that through your support of RMM. Then there's YEG, the new group that is teaching young people how to be entrepreneurs out in rural Livingston, New York. And there's that whole youth empowerment program. The camp that I mentioned, the overnight camp, is starting today. And those children will be given an opportunity to learn about leadership and about empowerment and have a chance to dance and to sing and to do art and to go swimming and to just have a week focused on them. About a quarter of those kids are children of migrant workers who follow their parents from camp to camp, from field to field, from orchard to orchard. But this week is all about making sure they have enough to eat, that they have a great time, and that they learn about how valuable they are and how loved they are. I was talking with Richard Witt last year as those children were leaving camp, and he said, you know, the kids that I'm hugging goodbye, I don't know if I'll ever see them again. I don't know what's going to happen to them. Because the laws in New York State do not protect our farm workers. They are deliberately excluded from the labor law. It happened in 1957, and it has not yet been changed. Something we need to think about. Well, I'm very fortunate because the children meet at the camp where I live. That's where they're holding camp now. And it's a wonderful opportunity for me to just see what's going on with them and how powerful the camp is. There's another group that RMM supports that I'd like the women of the congregation especially to be aware of. It's, they've connected with an organization called Daughters of Sarah, which was started when the predecessor for Richard, her name was Gail, she was an Episcopal priest, invited rural women in the Newburgh area, outside of the Newburgh area, to come together because the women there were so isolated and they were suffering in so many ways: domestic abuse, abuse at work, in the fields, and they were dealing with it on their own. So one of the women gathered about 25 women, and they met with Gail in this space that the Episcopal Church provided, and they turned to her, and she looked right back at them and said, I said I'd provide the space. You need to provide the leadership. You need to decide what it is you want to do. And out of that has come a group that meets every week that is still going strong. The woman who started it, her daughter is now the leader, and her daughter, one of them has a PhD and is taking on a leadership role. And they are holding each other up, holding each other accountable. And Ruth Faircloth, who is the current leader of that group, is ministering to those women in powerful ways. She started a conference called the Destiny Conference for Rural Women in New York State. And it happens every year, the first weekend of December. And this is where I want you to really search your hearts. The Episcopal Church provides scholarship money so that women from rural areas can attend that church, or attend that conference. It starts on a Friday night, it goes through Sunday lunch. They hear powerful, powerful inspirational speakers. They attend workshops on family life, on health, on abuse, and how to prevent it, and how to respond to it, on all kinds of things. But Ruth's vision is that it's great that our allies support this and provide scholarship money. But where are our women allies at this conference? Do they not also have a destiny that they are seeking? And wouldn't it be powerful if they would come and actually not just send money, but spend a day or even a weekend with the women that they are supporting and sharing their own stories and their own lives and their own desire to meet their destiny and to learn together? Those women out in the fields have a wisdom that we who have not suffered like that perhaps do not have, and a graciousness and a persistence that could teach us, just as that Canaanite woman, that rejected woman, could open Jesus' eyes. So my challenge to you this morning is to think about penciling that in on your calendar, the first weekend of December, to go to Binghamton and to spend a couple of days really understanding, really getting to know, to befriend, to accompany the women that you have been supporting. Not an easy thing, but a powerful way to be a follower of Jesus Christ. Amen?